left, our good friend Cher. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Now, all the films have been grouped into themes, and all tonight are about working women. Up next is a movie called Tender Comrade, a film from director Edward Dmytryk, starring Ginger Rogers and Robert Ryan. Now, this is a very interesting film about women in wartime, all living in the same home together while their boyfriends or husbands are off in the war.
When I was watching, I was thinking, I wonder what was going on at this time in the politics of the war. I was wondering, were they wanting people to feel like we're in this and we have to keep going, we have to be together? And because there were so many things, like when they were talking about hoarding and the butcher wanted to give them extra bacon and they were all up in arms, and there was so much, I mean, it was over the top. It was patriotic from each one of them. And I was just wondering, what was going on that they made this movie and it was so overly patriotic? And then you told me about Dalton Trumbo using it as something to put him on the House of Un-American Activities.
Well, he didn't use it. They used it against him. Because after the war, and so this was, what, several years after the war, 47 to 1950, when the House of Un-American Activities was out there, and they were blacklisting certain writers, directors, actors, and everything like that who were suspected of being communists. This movie, Tender Comrade, was one of the main movies that they pointed at. Because first the title, Tender Comrade, comrade being a Russian word for brotherhood and everything. And also the fact that it was, directed by Edward Dmytryk, who was accused of being a communist. Adrian Scott was involved in it. The writers, I mean, there were so many people connected to this movie.
But the movie was so patriotic.
Yes, it was. But it still got blamed all those years later. And what nobody really seemed to ever focus on was the fact that the government, President Roosevelt, actually asked Hollywood to make movies about the Russians that were sympathetic to the Russians, because we were now in the war with the Russians, and yet everybody was kind of suspicious of Russians in our country. And so they wanted everybody in America to now be sympathetic to the Russians because they were our allies. And this movie was one of those that was, had nothing to do with that.
If it had another title, they probably wouldn't have been able to do anything.
Except for the people involved in the writing, because they were suspected of sneaking their communist propaganda into films. But MGM made a movie called Song of Russia with Robert Taylor, about, very positive about the Russians. Warner Brothers made a movie called Mission to Moscow with Walter Houston about the Russians. I mean, there were so many movies made like that. And they didn't get the brunt of it as much as Tender Comrade, which is amazing now when you see the film, because it is patriotic, and it's really a kind of sweet, sentimental movie about these ladies.
Very, very sweet. And, of course, each one of them is completely different. And Ginger Rogers is more the boss, she's the one. There's the little ingenue girl, and then there's the older woman who I told you I really love.
Patricia Coolidge.
Right, from Shadow of a Doubt.
Yeah.
And then there was Ruth Hussey, who's, you can't.
The best.
You gotta love her.
Yeah.
And
Kim
then,
Hunter, early in her career.
Oh, is that who that was?
Kim Hunter.
The woman
from A Streetcar Named Desire.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's right. That's who it was.
Yes.
I didn't even recognize her.
Yeah. One of her early films.
Okay. Yeah. I had no idea. I had no idea it was her.
Well, let's see the movie. Here it is from 1943, with a cast that also includes, as we've mentioned, Ruth Hussey, Kim Hunter, and also Jane Darwell. We bring you Tender Comrade.